Welcome back everyone to the ongoing CPP for Beginners tutorials. This is going to be episode or lesson 27A. There will be a homework component to this lesson which is going to be just delightful. Now, last episode I introduced arrays. And arrays are a very difficult concept, especially for people who haven't programmed in the past. The best way I can explain it is an array is a container that holds multiple of the same type of variable. It can hold 10 ints, it can hold 10,000 ints, depending on what your need is. Now, there is an error in this code right here. And if you guys played around enough, I'm sure that you ran into an error something like this. You'll notice that I explicitly declare these variables, and you'll also notice that the size that I've chosen to make this is based on a variable called size. Now, when I try to compile this, which I'll do in just a moment, mind you, this is not the compilation for this exact code. It's that code after one simple fix. So I'll compile this, and you'll notice that we get a variable-sized object may not be initialized. And there's a reason for this. I'm not going to go into the utmost specifics of why that happens. However, I will tell you how to fix it. When you're initializing an array explicitly, just like this, what you actually need to do is you need to make this int into a type that is called constint. Meaning it's a constant. It doesn't change at all. So if later on in the code I try to do something like this and say size equals 2, that's not going to work because it's a constant int. See, it's a read-only variable. You cannot reassign it at any point throughout your code. Once it's assigned, that's it. There is a little sort of caveat to that I could get into, but I'm not going to. You can see in for a constant int, but it's extremely frowned upon. You should not do it if it's avoidable. And fortunately for us, it's avoidable. What you're going to notice is that I do have a bit of code here that is set up and basically ready to go. In this case, I have this line right here for something else, so we'll just say ignore me for now, and this is just going to output that's the output loop for array number 1. So I'll just compile this real quick so you guys can see that that is what's actually in array 1. So that's pretty simple. But what if I asked you, right? I want array 2 to be the same as array 1, but reversed. So let's say I want it to be 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Just like that. But I don't want to set it using, explicitly like that. Because in a real program, I don't necessarily say that the user set this equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know what the user set it to specifically. I don't know, what they put in. So I need a certain type of logic to change it around to being reversed. And there's a lot of different ways you can do this. You can do this using for loops. You can do this using while loops. You can do this using nested while loops. You can do this a lot of different ways. Now, here's the way that I learned it in my, I want to say it was, what was the name of that course? Oh, Program Design and Development. It was the worst course ever. It was taught without a programming language, all theory, flowcharting, nightmare. But this is probably the only useful thing I took away from it, is how to reverse an array. And unfortunately, once we get past arrays, we probably will never use them again. So this is really just more programming theory, so you guys can kind of have a firm understanding of it. So, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to make a for loop, and we're going to say for I equals 0, because that seems to be kind of how we work. I'm just going to comment out this line for now. That'll be in a future example that I show you. I is less than size, because, you know, we already have a size variable, so obviously we're going to need to iterate through this entire array. And then we're just going to say I++, which means that we're going to iterate through the entire array. I won't have to declare int I, because apparently I commented out where I declared it, which was professional. So here's what we do. We have two arrays, array 1 and array 2. Both of them are hold 5 ints, which would technically be array 1 of 0, and then I'll just copy this. And then that's 1, and then, oh, no, 1 and 2, and etc. So, you know, up to 4, because that's a 5-position array, 0 through 4. So in this case, what we need this for loop to do is we need it to go in the reverse order for array 2, meaning when this is looking at 4 for array 1, it needs to be sort of pointing to array 2 location 0. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to take array 2 of I, and we're going to set it equal, because this is always going to have the same value as the counter. It's going to go through in a very predictable way. And then we're going to take array 1, and this is going to be a little bit of math here. And it's going to be size minus size minus I minus 1. And so let me sort of explain what this means. You can put that in parentheses if you really want. It should evaluate fine in this scenario, but it's always good to have an extra parenthesis here and there in case you get confused. I have to redeclare that int too. Sorry, the red lines bother me when I see them. I'm like, oh my god, error. But in this case, the reason why is we're taking 5. And if we look at array 1 at location 5, that's actually an error. It's known as an out-of-bounds error. Because like I was saying earlier, we have array 1 of 3 and array, oh my god, can't spell, 1 of 4. So that's literally all this array is. It's those 5 positions. So when we subtract I from it, that's actually just so it correlates with where we are in the loop. And then subtracting 1 is because arrays are 0 indexed. So when we run this, I'm just going to change this output loop. Actually, you know what? I'm going to copy paste it. Whoa. Toss in a couple endls. And then I'll do the same thing for array 2. And if, you know, the sun and the moon and all the stars align, then these should print out the same thing, hopefully. So we're going to give that a shot. And yep, there it is. It's a perfect reversal of each other. You have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So that was rather successful sort of programming that we had go on there. But there is technically another way that you could do this. It's not as pretty, but I think that it's a little bit easier to understand in general. So I'm going to try that, and hopefully I can get it to work on my first try. So if you'll notice here, I have 3 variables. I have I, J, and I'm going to switch that one to K, because K is a lot easier to read than L. And now you can actually do the same thing that we did here with a nested while loop. And again, you'll probably never need to use this in a real situation, but I want to show you just for the sake of theory. So we start I at 5. We started at 5 because we're going to need to be counting down in one direction. And then J is 0 because we're counting up in the other direction. And K is 0, well, you'll see why in a second. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start and say while I is greater than 0, because we're going to want to iterate through until every single component of array 1 has been hit. And as long as it's greater than 0, it still hasn't hit array 1 of 0. So we need to do that. And then we're immediately going to jump into another while loop, because that outer while loop doesn't actually need to do anything. And we're going to say J is less than K. And right now, they're equal. So it's not less than K. So this is actually going to return false on its first run through. But what we're going to want it to do when it does return true is we're going to want it to set array 2 of J equal to array 1 of I. And then after it does that, we're going to want it to increment J. And every time through this outer loop, we're going to need it to increment K and I. Because I is the one that's actually counting the location in the first array. And K is the one that's saying whether or not it's okay for J to go. And in this case, it only needs to do that once. In this case, we're not incrementing I, we're decrementing it. We want it to get closer to 0, or else we're going to be in an endless loop. Now, that should be the code right there. I'm just going to copy these two for statements here from earlier. And that should hopefully do what I wanted. And let's try to compile this. And yep, it looks like I've successfully reversed the arrays again in a completely and totally different sort of way. So this kind of falls into that sort of programming logic that I presented to you guys earlier, where you can really solve a problem in a lot of different ways. You can go about this with whiles. You could, I mean, if you were really magical, you could probably go about this with an if statement. It would have to be an extremely complex if, and there would be 100 easier ways of doing it. But again, there are multiple ways of solving the same problem, some of them easier, some of them more difficult. Well, I'm going to wrap it up here, folks. I'm going to post all this source code online. Your homework is simply going to be to take an array. You can do an array of characters, you can do an array of numbers, etc. And I just want you guys to try to reverse it. You can try either of these methods, but try to do it without looking at the source code that I just generated. I will post the source code, so if you get stuck, take a peek. If you need an explanation as to what I did in this lesson and why I was doing each step of it, I can go back and explain that a little bit more. Generally, it's simple math that you guys should be able to just kind of pick up by looking at it and thinking it through. Alright, well, thank you guys for watching. My name's Damien. If you guys have any questions, post a comment below, shoot me an email on uReddit, or toss up a forum post on cppforbeginners.com. Alright, thanks a lot.